My boyfriend sold me into a mountain village only to find out it was my own home. My boyfriend sold me into the mountains for 2,000 yuan. He looked at me with a cold expression. I thought you could sell it for more money, but who knew you'd be so useless? I looked at the familiar room, feeling a bit overwhelmed. Who would have thought he sold me back to my uncle's house? It was only after I went to university that I realized how remote the mountain village I lived in was. To put it in modern terms, beyond the mountain is still just more mountains. Once trafficked here, it's probably a lifetime from which you can never escape. And in the nearby mountains, there was only our one village. Because we were so poor, the men in the village couldn't find wives, so the daughters of the village were highly sought after. Girls who couldn't afford to study or whose grades were poor were promised off early, waiting to marry at 15 or 16. I was the only exception. Although I am a girl, my parents dote on me and fully support my education. Through my hard work, I was admitted to an undergraduate program, not disappointing anyone's expectations. Although quite ordinary, I am also the only college student in the village. The villagers sent me off with laughter as I left the mountains. In the blink of an eye, I have already been attending university away from home for 2 years. After leaving the mountains, I realized how limited my own perspective had been. I studied like crazy, absorbing knowledge from the outside world. To earn a bit more money for the new year, I haven't been home for 2 years. There is mainly one other reason. My home is really too remote. To get to town, you have to take a bus, then a motorcycle to the mountainside, and then walk several hours along mountain paths. If it rains, it could take an entire day to get there. So, I told my parents that I wouldn't be coming home. But this year is different. I have a boyfriend named Victor. He treats me very well. I was planning to take him home to meet my parents and be honest about my family situation. Victor suddenly said he would take me to do a part-time job on the weekend, where I could earn a lot of money. I agreed without hesitation. Who would have thought? As soon as I got on a bus and drank the beverage he gave me, I immediately fell into a drowsy sleep. When I opened my eyes again, I found myself waking up in a van. Then I heard the sound of the vehicle braking sharply beside my ear, and the next moment my head was heavily slammed against the van's interior. Dare to run? I'll break your legs. In a daze, I heard a man's voice. It sounded very familiar. Then came the crisp sound of clapping. I struggled to sit up, but the window was tightly covered by someone. My heart sank halfway. No matter how foolish I am, I know I have been trafficked. Gathering my thoughts, I lay on the cold train carriage, desperately searching for a way to escape. But in the next moment, Victor's face appeared before me, his gaze cold and indifferent. Awake. Startled, I was about to speak when he covered my mouth and nose with a medicine-soaked towel, and I lost consciousness once again. When I became conscious, I instinctively looked up, only to find my hands and feet tightly bound. Next door, I heard Victor talking with a man. 3,000, no less. Who knows if you've slept with her or not, at most 2,000, and I still need to inspect the goods. I listened to the familiar dialect, and a flicker of hope ignited in my heart. Isn't this the language spoken around here? Fortunately, when I was in love, I didn't tell Victor where I was from because of my insecurity. After a long argument, it seemed like the price was settled. 2,000 yuan. I bit my lip, hating Victor to death. It was so hard to have a first crush, and yet he betrayed me. I guess I'll never fall in love in this lifetime. Before long, the old door creaked open. The black cloth covering my face was pulled away. I furrowed my brows, and after a moment, my eyes adjusted to the light, and I could clearly see everything before me. Standing in front of me was Victor, a cigarette dangling from his mouth, glaring at me fiercely. I thought you could sell it for more money, but who knew you'd be so useless? Only sold for 2,000 yuan. After saying that, he threw the cigarette, but on the ground and crushed it forcefully. Don't blame me, just stay here quietly. Then, he turned around, closed the door, and left. As for me, I just sat there stunned on the bed, without any reaction. It wasn't because I was scared, but because I was looking at the familiar yellow-brown earthen wall in front of me and the mountains outside the courtyard that had never changed in my memory. There was only one sentence in my heart. Isn't this my hometown? Victor trafficked me back to my hometown. I shifted my body and looked out the window. Fortunately, the courtyard gate was not closed. I immediately saw the stone stool at the entrance and the swing I had played on countless times as a child. According to the route, this is Eric's house in our village. Most people in our village have the surname Yang, and we are all related. By generation, I should call him Little Uncle. With a slap, the door was opened by someone. I turned around excitedly, and sure enough, it was Eric. In an instant, the panic in my heart vanished, and I was about to call out to him softly. But when Eric saw that I was awake, he stepped forward and slapped me twice, making my mouth taste of blood. You filthy woman. Don't think about running. Stay at home and give me a son, or else you won't have a good outcome. A slap left me stunned on the spot. In my memory, Eric's loving appearance still lingers in my mind. It's like a completely different person compared to the cold and rude face he has now. I came to my senses and tried hard to spit out the towel full of foul stench from my mouth. Seeing me like this, Eric mistakenly thought I was resisting, spat disdainfully, then grabbed my hair and dragged me to the ground. You idiot, you came to my house and still want to leave? I even used all the savings in the house to trade for you, and you still want to run? You'll be with me for the rest of your life. A sharp pain came from my scalp. I couldn't help but frown, trying to shout at Eric, hoping he could understand my gaze. But he laughed out loud and actually walked towards me. Damn it, not listening, huh? In such a hurry. After speaking, he headed straight for my chest. Seeing this, a wave of despair washed over me. In a fierce struggle, I just managed to spit out the towel from my mouth. I immediately shouted loudly, Uncle Eric, it's Luna. I'm Luna. Please let me go. I was crying uncontrollably, tears streaming down my face. Seeing my disheveled state, Eric burst out laughing. Luna? Who knows you? Don't try to connect yourself to me. I'm Luna. Have you forgotten you used to hold me when we were kids? I cried until my eyes were scrunched shut. Eric's movement faltered, and he was shocked. Luna? You are Luna. I quickly nodded. Panic instantly appeared on Eric's face, and he was about to loosen the ropes on me immediately. But at that moment, the door was kicked open by someone. No! The person who came in was Eric's 70-year-old mother. She stood with her hands on her hips and shouted rudely, Son, this is the wife we married with all our savings. How can you let her go? Even if she is Luna, I won't let her leave. Eric heard his mother say this and showed a troubled expression on his face. She is Michael's daughter. My dad has always been extremely doting on me, his daughter. When I was little, the neighbor's son bullied me, and my dad gave him a good beating. People say, is it really necessary to spoil a girl so much? My dad doesn't listen to what others say. He still treats me like his precious treasure. He has a strong and tough personality, and no one in the village dares to mess with him. Thinking of my dad, I instantly felt confident. Grandma, you know how good my dad has been to me. If you let me go, I can give you that money. Over the past 2 years, I've been tutoring part-time at school, and my savings must be close to 10,000. We're all from the same village, and yet this kind of misunderstanding has happened. As long as Eric lets me go, I'm willing to act as if nothing ever happened. Perhaps thinking of my dad's decisive and forceful nature, Eric and his mom looked at each other. That old woman pulled Eric aside, fuming with indignation. Son, why did you bring Luna home? Honestly, that Michael is not someone to mess with, sigh. Eric also looked very annoyed. Who knew it was her who was bought over? If I had known, I would have looked more carefully. No, son, how can you be sure this woman is Luna? Maybe when the traffickers brought her, they saw the stickers on the wall. Besides, Luna hasn't come back for 2 years. Does she even look like this? Eric nodded blankly. Yeah, What they were talking about were the posters pasted on the doors of every household in our village. When I was admitted to university, the village chief put up a poster to celebrate, which not only had my name but also my photo. So, Eric's mom quickly ran out, tore down that poster, brought it in to compare with me, and then breathed a sigh of relief. "Son, look, she is definitely not Luna. She is more beautiful than Luna." The me on the poster, with a dark face, wearing a bright pink short-sleeve shirt, was indeed a completely different person from who I am now. But once you enter university, which girl doesn't learn to dress up? I was so anxious that I kept stomping my feet. No, this is who I am. Before I could finish speaking, Eric's mother punched me right in the face, making my nose bleed profusely. "You stubborn girl, how dare you talk back after being exposed? City women really need to be beaten to behave. Son, remember this. If she dares talk back again, hit her just like I did." I howled in pain uncontrollably, my heart aching unbearably, and hurriedly shouted recklessly towards the front door. "I am Luna, my dad is Michael, I am trapped at home by Eric. Can someone call my dad over? I will pay him. Help me!" I shouted at the top of my lungs. Suddenly, a sharp pain struck my head, followed by a wave of dizziness. Shocked, I turned around. But all I saw was an old, sinister face. "You damn girl, if you cause trouble again, I'll make you regret it," she said viciously. I lay on the muddy ground, covered in dust, unable to speak because of the pain. Eric's mother ordered her son to lock me up, then went to close the courtyard gate. I struggled desperately, but couldn't move at all. At a critical moment, someone suddenly walked in from outside the door. "Margaret, I heard your son brought a wife home. When are you holding the wedding banquet? We'll all come to celebrate." Yes, your son is already in his 40s. Hurry up and get it done, so he can give you a big, healthy boy." Several women chatted, each adding their own words. Margaret's face stiffened, and she could only lead everyone into the main room. Someone curious ran into the house to see what kind of bride Eric had married, but upon seeing me chained to the bed with iron locks, their expression changed. "Margaret, why is your new daughter-in-law tied up? Does she not want to be here?" One of the women said this while cracking sunflower seeds. Margaret's expression darkened. "Mind your own business. My daughter-in-law is just mentally ill. I'm only afraid she'll run away." Only then did everyone show their natural expressions. Otherwise, with Eric's character, could he have found someone so young? Seeing the women chatting briefly and about to leave, I coughed gloomily a couple of times, then mustered my strength to jump off the bed and grabbed the leg of one of them. "Don't go, Auntie, it's me, Luna. She is my father's cousin-in-law. In the past, she was scolded by my dad for urging my grandmother to give me away, and since then, we haven't had much contact. But even with the resentment between us, at this moment, I had no choice but to seek her help." Second aunt was startled by my disheveled appearance. Seeing this, Eric covered my mouth with one hand and hurriedly dragged me into the dim inner room. "Don't listen to this madwoman's nonsense. She's seriously crazy and doesn't even know who she is. We've already given the bride price to her parents, so you better not interfere." My mouth was covered, and I could only keep shaking my head and wailing, unable to utter a single complete syllable. Second aunt stared at me for a while, then curled her lips. "Michael's daughter doesn't look like this. She's not this handsome, nor this thin." After saying that, second aunt took out a handful of sunflower seeds from her pocket and happily cracked them as she walked away. I looked at their backs in despair. I deeply regret trying every possible way to lose weight and whiten my skin in college. Eric threw me into the pitch-dark woodshed. Because the movement was too rough, I had an intimate encounter with the ground, and it took me quite a while to recover. But I dare not let myself close my eyes. No matter how much it hurts, I have to find a way to escape. After Eric left, I began to search around the woodshed for anything that could unlock the chains on my feet. Fortunately, Eric was probably too panicked to notice that there was a large machete blatantly lying in the woodshed. I was both shocked and delighted, quickly cutting the rope on my wrist and desperately grinding the iron chain on my foot with a machete. Although the iron chain was thin, I felt like it took a long time of grinding before it finally broke. I breathed a sigh of relief. Just then, the door was opened. The light shone on me, naturally revealing all the scenes inside the room. Seeing that neither the ropes nor the chains could hold me, Eric and his mother grew anxious. "You stubborn girl, you're quite good at running." I gripped the machete tightly in my hand and swung it desperately. "If you don't let me go, we'll die together." Facing the sharp machetes, the two instantly changed their expressions and could only retreat step by step. I struggled to suppress the emotions in my heart, turned my back on them, and walked out step by step, then rushed into the yard. But who would have thought that in just that short time, many people had already gathered in the yard. Seeing me rush out holding a knife, a strong man ran over and said to Eric, "Brother, our family is all here to cheer you on as you get married." I glanced around a few times. I found at least 20 people gathered in the yard, all holding red paper cuttings, some still decorating the yard. They all seemed to be Eric's relatives. Margaret, seeing this, said proudly, "Girl, if you put down the knife and marry my son properly, you'll suffer less. Otherwise, I'm telling you, women all need to be taught a lesson." My heart was as dead as ashes, yet I still held onto a final thread of hope. "I've said it before, I am Luna, my father is Michael. As soon as he finds out how you've treated me, you'll see what happens." Hearing me say this, everyone in the courtyard looked at each other in confusion. "Michael's daughter? Isn't she the only college student in your village? Are you in such a hurry to call us here just to get scolded?" The others also nodded. "No, you should go ask her. If she really is Michael's daughter, you should quickly send her back. We don't know what kind of misunderstanding might be in the middle." Margaret heard it. A hesitant expression appeared on her face. She trembled for a long time, but still firmly nodded. "No, she is definitely not Luna. Luna is a college student. This woman is second-hand goods sent by her man." I got anxious. That damn Victor, not only did he sell me out while we were dating, but he also spread rumors everywhere. At that moment, Eric suddenly rushed over and snatched the machete from my hand. I was already anxious, and his sudden move caught me completely off guard. "Wifey, don't struggle. Tonight is our wedding night." He held me tightly, and I instinctively tried to push him away, but Eric raised his hand and slapped me several times, making my vision go dark. At the critical moment, second uncle's wife's voice came from outside the tightly closed door. "Sister-in-law, was that new daughter-in-law of yours really sent by her parents just now? I feel something's a bit off. How does she know Luna?" Seizing the opportunity, I shouted desperately, "Aunt." The next second, Eric tightly covered my mouth and nose. However, at that moment, my dad's voice suddenly appeared. "Eric, get the hell out here. My cousin's wife told me that your woman keeps shouting that she is Luna." I swear I have never found my father's voice so pleasant to hear before. So I struggled excitedly, trying to break free. But Eric kept covering my mouth, and when he saw me trying to speak, he kicked me down again. I fell, bleeding profusely, crying silently. And everyone in the yard, upon hearing my dad's voice, didn't dare to say a word. Seeing this, my dad got anxious. "Eric, you damn well better stop playing dead and come out here. No wonder my daughter hasn't called me all day. Before, I would call my dad every day, and no matter how busy I was, I would at least send a message. But now it's almost dark and I still haven't looked for him." Mom and Dad keenly sensed that something was wrong. After hearing about Eric from second uncle's wife, they immediately rushed over. "Where are you? Don't play dead, open the door for me. If my daughter really has been kidnapped by you, beware that I won't show any mercy. That girl was as thin as a firewood stick. How could she be Luna?" Margaret looked outside the door a little fearfully and hurriedly explained. But my dad didn't believe it and insisted on coming in. The few people in the yard quickly slipped into the house to hide. not even having the courage to confront my dad. Soon, it was just me, Eric, and his mother, and the sound of my dad pounding on the door. My eyes welled up, and I was about to cry. Since I was little, my dad has always been very protective of me. Now, even if he just hears someone say I've been kidnapped, he would rush over recklessly, without caring at all whether there might be danger here. The fragile wooden door simply couldn't withstand the rough treatment. Before long, it was shaking and about to collapse. Eric gritted his teeth, anxious at the noise, and hurriedly carried me to the corner of the yard, opened the cellar where the sweet potatoes were stored, and threw me down inside. The cellar entrance was narrow, about 2 meters high. My skin was scraped by the sand and soil as I suddenly hit the ground. My already injured body couldn't take it anymore, and I fainted completely. When I woke up again, I felt dizzy and unsteady, as if I were walking on clouds. Seeing me open my eyes, 2 faces suddenly came close, and the whole room burst into conversation. "Luna, how are you feeling now? Are you in a lot of pain? Do you want some water? Dad will feed you." "Daughter, I've made chicken soup for you. I'll bring it to you right now." I heard the familiar voice and burst into tears with a wail. My mother held me tenderly in her arms, listening to my hoarse and broken sobs. After a long while, I wiped my tears, looked at the family members in the room, and pouted. "Dad, Mom, I thought I would never be saved. You don't know, I was really so scared. I truly thought I would be locked up for life." Sob, sob, sob. When I was little, I quite liked going to Eric's house to play. He would give each of us kids candy and play games with us. Who would have known that behind the scenes, he was such a heartless monster in human form? Calming my emotions, I said to my parents, "I'm sorry, Mom and Dad. I lied to you. I have a boyfriend who said he could take me to earn money, but who knew he sold me here?" Upon hearing this, my father's face instantly darkened. "Don't worry, Dad will definitely seek justice for you." My mom defiantly took 2 sips of water. "Just wait, Mom has to get back at you." After saying that, she rushed out with the aunt and young aunt in the room. Judging by this, they're going to confront Eric. I sniffled, finally feeling the sense of being home. In this accident, I broke my leg. Although the wounds on my body were dressed, it would still take some time to fully heal. During this time, I also heard that my mom rushed to Eric's house and gave him a severe beating. After I stayed at home for 2 days, I discussed it with my dad and then reported it to the police. Although our small mountain village is poor, no one has ever heard of a daughter-in-law being bought. Now, with legal education campaigns, everyone knows this is illegal behavior. How could anyone knowingly break the law? Only someone like Eric, an old bachelor who can't get married, would constantly think of such schemes. Soon, the police arrived. They took Eric's family away and also brought me in for questioning. After I told the police everything I knew about Victor in detail, they hurried off to investigate him. All of Victor's information is fake. He probably never even went to college. Henry, holding his laptop, said in a heavy tone. I was startled and blurted out, "How could this be?" Victor and I met in the school library. The way he spoke so confidently made him seem like a knowledgeable top student. Victor is not his real name. This might all be a trap set by the human trafficking gang to get close to you. But surprisingly, you are the only one from your village who has been trafficked so far. I tugged at the corner of my mouth. Damn, I'm the dumbest. Henry patted my shoulder and comforted me. It's okay, you did help the police after all. Remember to contact us if anything comes up. Henry was the police officer in charge of this case, and he was also the one who laughed at me the hardest when he found out I was sold back to my hometown. I nodded. After the questioning, I walked out of the police station holding the items. Henry ran out, still clutching a set of car keys in his hand. Let me take you back. It's not easy to get a ride from here. Thinking about the few cars at the station and glancing at the sky dyed by the sunset, I was more than happy. On the way, Henry told me that the women trafficked from several nearby villages had been sent back to their homes, which was a small mercy in the midst of misfortune. Just when I thought all the villains would be brought to justice, I was knocked unconscious and taken away right at the village entrance. When I opened my eyes again, I was shocked to see the familiar earthen brick house. In front of me was Eric, unexpectedly. I was tied up tightly all over and a foul-smelling towel was stuffed into my mouth. I glared at him with hatred. Last time, he got away with the police interrogation by throwing a tantrum and playing dumb, plus having a history of mental illness, and now he's even reading my fortune. Eric squatted in front of me, pulled out a crumpled cigarette from his bag, and blew smoke gloomily in front of me. He looked at me, his eyes, once old, now full of coldness. "Luna, I just want you to bear me a child, so what?" "I only want a child to take care of me in my old age. Luna, that's my only request." Eric looked at me greedily. A cold sweat broke out all over my body. Seeing his hand reaching towards me, I quickly dodged away. I don't know how I angered Eric, but his face twisted in anger. "Don't worry, even if I can't get away this time, don't think you'll walk out alive. I spent so much money, I'm not planning to spend my life in prison. Even if I die, I want to enjoy myself." He slowly approached, and I also slowly moved backward, but there was nowhere to retreat. I was already pressed against the wall. Eric grabbed my wrist tightly. I struggled hard, but I couldn't overpower him. Just as he pulled my pants down to my knees, I heard a muffled grunt and opened my eyes. I happened to see Henry. He appeared before me like a god. At that moment, I felt he was radiating all kinds of light. Henry pinned Victor to the ground, called the station, and then had him taken away. After all this, he sent me home, wounded once again. However, when Henry helped me up, the sharp pain in my ankle made me cry out instinctively. Henry bent down, sighed when he saw my swollen ankle, then turned his back and crouched in front of me. "Come up." Blushing, I wrapped my arms around his neck and was lifted up by Henry. The roughness of Henry's palm came through the skin on my legs. Under the setting sun, Henry's arms made me feel even more at ease. "Why are you here?" I took the initiative to start the conversation. "I originally wanted to ask you something, but who knew I would just happen to see you being knocked out and taken away at the village entrance. When I saw it was Eric, I was afraid he would hurt you, so I had to find a chance." I smiled and blurted it out. "With you here, how could Eric ever hurt me?" After realizing it, my cheeks flushed. Henry didn't say anything either, but the tips of his ears were unusually red. Because Eric's information was delayed, coupled with the police's confidentiality work, Victor and his traffickers had no idea that what they were doing had already been exposed. In order to catch them all at once, Henry pretended to be Eric, said he wanted to change wives again, and handed me over. When Victor heard that I was going to be sent away, he panicked. He knew everything about me, but he was just worried that I would run away and ruin his plans, so he sent me to such a remote place. If something went wrong halfway, he would be exposed. So, Victor hurriedly brought people over. Seeing that I was hidden in the woodshed, he breathed a sigh of relief. Sneering, he squatted down in front of me. "You refused to sleep with me that night, and now here you are in this small mountain village, having children with a rural man. Are you satisfied now? What are you pretending for?" As soon as these words were spoken, the men behind Victor laughed even more smugly. I looked at everyone speechlessly. TSK, TSK, TSK. At that time, just when Victor and I had started dating, he coaxed me into booking a hotel room. Although women in our village marry young, their mindset is backward. They believe you can't be intimate with a man before marriage. So I refused him. It was probably because I had embarrassed him then, challenging Victor's masculine pride, that he recklessly sold me off to the countryside. I have to admit, Victor used to pretend really well. I never thought he was someone who would break the law. I didn't bother arguing back. Anyway, he was going to prison. Seeing my silence, Victor thought I was ignoring him and looked extremely displeased. "What are you still pretending for? You're about to have another man's child. You must be dirty by now." He grabbed my chin viciously. He swung his arm in a wide arc and slapped me. But at that moment, someone kicked him away. It was Henry. Victor grimaced in pain. "Who is it?" The man behind Victor saw this, immediately helped him up, then glared fiercely at Henry. "How dare you hit Brother Sue? Do you want to die?" When Victor and his group were about to teach Henry a lesson, the woodshed door was suddenly kicked open. They turned around in confusion, only to see my parents and many relatives, probably more than a dozen, all holding hoes and sickles. My dad walked in, his face dark and grim. Who doesn't want to live? Because of years of hard work, the muscles on my dad's body were bulging, making him look especially strong in front of Victor from the white-cut chicken stall. Victor and his group panicked and quickly stepped back. My dad held an axe, looked coldly at Victor, and raised his hand toward him. "You're the one who sold my daughter? You don't even ask who I am. Her mother and I sent Luna away to study, and you actually sold her into the mountains. To help me recover my health, my dad specially slaughtered a sheep, using an axe, and the bloodstains on it were still there, not fading at all." Victor instantly backed down, repeatedly saying it was a misunderstanding. "Uncle, you're mistaken. Luna and I are a couple. I came this time to save her." Victor spoke while trying hard to signal me with his eyes. My dad was too lazy to listen to his excuses, grabbed Victor by the collar and dragged him outside the door. Henry untied the ropes for me. I walked out facing the light. However, as soon as Victor saw the villagers gathered all around the yard, he immediately gained confidence. He got up from the ground, a look of triumph on his face. "What are you so proud of? This place isn't your home. If you take away the wives of the villagers here, do you think they'll let you go?" After saying that, Victor smiled ingratiatingly at the man beside him. "Hello, Uncle. I'm Eric's friend. These people are trying to snatch Eric's wife away. Please don't let them get away with it." The fierce and menacing man slowly shifted his gaze towards us, expressionless. But in the next moment, under the watchful eyes of all of us, he slapped Victor hard. "You want to teach me how to do things? I've watched Luna grow up since she was little. What is Eric anyway, to be worthy of her?" I couldn't help but find it amusing. This man still seems to not have realized what's going on. Truly foolish. I stood up, walked over to Victor, and then turned to smile at the man. "Uncle, don't worry, we'll take care of this guy." Hearing me call him Uncle, Victor was stunned. While he was stunned, I raised my hand and slapped him directly. 5 red marks suddenly appeared on Victor's face. He covered his face, looking at everyone standing behind me, completely losing his mind. "What is going on? How could these villagers be helping you? What exactly did you give him?" Seeing that Victor still hadn't figured it out, my mom and second aunt each gave him a kick. My uncle-in-law stood over Victor condescendingly and spoke with a heart-wrenching tone. "We are all from this village, and Luna is the only college student from our village. These people here are Luna's parents, her family. Oh, and there's also a police officer." Victor couldn't accept this fact, and the little henchmen around him also looked astonished. I looked at the scene with satisfaction and spoke deliberately. "Although our village is poor, nothing like this has ever happened. As soon as any illegal behavior is discovered, we still report it to the police. Do you think the people here are backward in their thinking? Let me tell you, everyone in our village can clearly distinguish right from wrong and does not engage in illegal activities." The relatives around me couldn't help but applaud and cheer when they heard my words. The village chief also entered the courtyard with the police, taking Victor and the others away. Later, after the police officers interrogated Victor, they rounded up all the human traffickers in one sweep. It turned out that Victor also came from a poor rural village. When he went to the city to work, he realized that apart from having a decent face, he was good for nothing else. In order to make money, he chose a dark path. Henry told me that Victor had trafficked more than a dozen girls, all under the pretense of dating. Later, Victor and the main culprits were sentenced to more than 20 years, and the human trafficking boss behind them was also caught at the border, ultimately facing the death penalty. As for Eric and his mother, They were released due to their old age and mental condition. But the mother and son felt they had no face to live in the village and ultimately chose to hang themselves. I felt somewhat melancholy when I heard the news. When they were young, Eric and his mother were also kind to the people in the village. It was precisely their deep obsession with the child and daughter-in-law over the years that led them down this path. But if you do something wrong, you have to pay the price. If the person who was abducted wasn't me, but another girl, her whole life would have been ruined. After spending the new year in my hometown, I returned to school, treading on the unmelted white snow, returning to the once ordinary life. However, the only thing I considered a change was that I started dating again, and this time the person was absolutely reliable, Henry. We had a long-distance relationship, which was quite suitable. He was busy with work, I was busy with studying, and we only had time to call each other late at night. My roommate said my relationship was boring, but I felt unusually secure. 2 years later, I graduated and returned to my hometown, taking a job at the town government to contribute to the development of my hometown. Henry's police station was right next to the government office, and we met more times every day than we did during the year of our long-distance relationship. Soon, Henry and I reached the stage of discussing marriage. After consulting both our parents, he nervously sat at our dining table holding a gift. However, Henry was indeed a bit awkward the first time he met my parents, insisting on helping in the kitchen, but ended up not knowing how to use the traditional stove, almost setting the house on fire. After finally putting out the fire, I cooked a meal, but ended up breaking a bowl while serving the dishes. My dad wore a stern face and said nothing. Henry's eyes were full of panic. After dinner, Henry took a deep breath, knelt down in front of my father, and spoke sincerely. "Uncle, Auntie, I know you cherish Luna like the apple of your eye. Please rest assured, I will treat her well. I hope you can agree to our relationship." Saying this, he took a card out of his bag. "This is all the savings I've accumulated since I started working. As long as you agree, I will transfer it to Luna immediately. The bride price is separate. I also have a house in town and I will add Luna's name to it. I can't offer much, but it is everything I have." In the end, my parents agreed. My dad said he doesn't care about how much money there is, only about sincerity. Later, Henry and I got married and worked hard together in the town.